Hello, everyone. Welcome to Challenging Your Status Quo, the go-to podcast for those seeking success that resonates on every level. Our guide on this journey to success is J.A. Dava, co-founder of Latreia Coaching and Consulting. Each episode, we challenge you to step outside your comfort zone in redefining holistic success. Because in order to truly excel, one must rise in all aspects of life: spiritual, physical, relational, and philanthropical. So buckle up. Let's explore how your vocation and well-being can harmonize perfectly. And give a warm welcome to the host of Challenging Your Status Quo, J.A. Dava.
Good morning, everybody. This is J.A. Dava, Latreia Coaching and Consulting, with another Challenging Your Status Quo. Excited about this morning because this morning, we usually, when you come on this show, you're going to hear something definitely about the vocational side of you, and you're going to hear some great tips about your vocation, and we all understand that. But one of the things that I constantly want to make sure happens on this show is that you will also start to focus on other things, other well-beings, as we've talked about. And so when we're talking about vocational well-being, you're going to get touched on things that are important as well as vocational well-being. And that is your first one, obviously, is your relational well-being. Your relational well-being being your family. How are you doing there? Your friends, and your peers at work. How are you doing in that side of it? Then there's the physical well-being, which is how are you doing physically, mentally? Are you well in tune? Are you taking care of that side of you? Are you so focused on vocation and making it financially big, but then you're letting everything else go? And then the other part of that, vocational being number 4, right, of your well-beings, is the philanthropical well-being. And the philanthropical well-being is, what do you do with the blessings that have been given to you? Are you out sharing it, or are you just kind of hoarding it, right? And so I'm going to walk in with this particular story as I introduce this guest of ours, because this guest right here is going to cover pretty much all of that, right? And that's why I'm so excited about this next guest. But I will tell you that when it comes to the philanthropical and all of those, if you really think about it, there used to be a family name. Maybe I won't say who the family name is, but they're a famous roofing company, or a carpet company here in Columbus, Ohio. And they built up just a massive, their fortunes, right? And I remember walking into their house that they were building about 5 minutes away from me. And I was taking a walk through it because it wasn't quite completed yet, but it's almost done. And as a realtor, I was touring it. And all of a sudden I saw some people walking up the driveway. So when I got to I came out making sure that they don't come in under my lockbox, so to speak, right? I sooner or later realized that it was the wife of the owner, right? And so I was complimenting them on their beautiful home. And here's where she turned around. For whatever reason, I felt like it just wasn't being received well. So I thought, oh man, did I overstep my bounds? What happened here? And she goes, well, would you like to buy it? And I'm like, what? And I'm like, what do you mean? And all of a sudden, out of the blue, she just said, so my husband worked hard to get to the point of retirement, and this is our retirement home. We built it. He was up on the roof just finishing up certain things. He was very involved in building his home, and he had a heart attack up on that roof, right? And then he died on that roof, basically. And he was only 3 weeks beyond retirement, right? So he had just retired, amassed these fortunes, and here's a wife who was just willing to just kind of let it go. Because, what is the real lesson there, right? And that real lesson is that I absolutely believe that this gentleman and this family probably really worked hard to be there. But somehow, not that you can predict when a heart attack is going to come, but there's other factors that are involved, right? So physical well-being is something that's very, very important. And so, it just kind of walks us into this whole thing because, one of the things that when I bring guests on, one of the things that I love about it is, first of all, they're you and I. It is not someone that's just, so out of reach, so to speak. They're everyday people, and they're special in their field, and they're special people. But you'll be able to relate. And this person is not only a very, very good friend of mine. I consider her family, by the way. And we met vocationally for sure. And then we ended up crossing just about every single one of those other well-beings. And so I want to introduce her to you as not only an incredible friend, a family member, if I may call her that, but I want to introduce you to her because she's an executive in the mortgage industry. I've watched her growth happen in years and years, and I have her talk to you, but she is part of UFCU. And without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and have her come on. Her name is Christy Soukhamneut. And some of you guys know Christy. Some of you guys absolutely know Christy, but I'm not sure you know the depth of Christy. Christy, welcome to Challenging Your Status Quo. How are you?
I'm great, J.A. Thanks for having me on. And I loved hearing that story that you started with, because it does. And I'm going to share a story about our past that I hope is okay to share, because I think it touches on what we talk about and what the heart of your podcast is. And you talk about you don't know when you're going to have a heart attack. And I remember early in our relationship, you had a heart attack. And what was really interesting is we had some meetings scheduled and some workshops and things that we were doing together. And you weren't obviously able to come because you had to go take care of your health. You'd had a heart attack. You were in the hospital. And then when you were recovered or well enough, we kind of rescheduled some of these things, and we were on stage together, talking with a group of our referral partners and really helping them to grow their business. And this was, this has been a number of years ago, because it was really early in our getting to know each other. Yeah. And you challenged me at that point because you were working on really trying to take care of your health, which is something that you hadn't necessarily focused on at that particular point in your life.
That's
and
right.
You were starting to run, and you were like, I'm going to run a marathon and you should run it with me. And I remember thinking, holy cow, I don't even run like 5 miles today. Like, I literally don't even run to the end of the street. But there was like a little pressure standing in front of, 100 of my best referral partners or whatever the number was to say yes. And then, as you know, once you're committed, you're committed. Like, once I'm in, if I said it, that's what's going to happen.
Right.
It was such a beautiful journey with getting to know each other personally, becoming, I think that is really this kickstart to why we can call each other family, is just going through that and sharing both the highs and the lows of going from, couch potato to 26.2 miles. Oof. And doing the journey that we did together and having just the most amazing relationship with a group of friends who came to support our running that race.
I remember, yeah.
They made hats, and I still have that hat, actually.
It's not
as pretty as it was the day that Kelly handed it to me. But we had hats and we had support. And what an amazing intersection.
Yeah. Wow.
Work and personal and health. And, there was definitely also a lot of spiritual in those days leading up to that marathon.
Do you know Christy? So you just brought it home. I got goosebumps. You just brought it home. I didn't realize that was one of the really big turning points in our lives, right? As far as working together, because it was so much more than just the vocational side of it at that point, right? But I remember having that heart attack. That was in 2008, April 1st of 2008 is when I had my heart attack, right? And I'm only 5'8". So anybody that's 5'8", that's 203 pounds, is somebody that should either be a full-time running back in the NFL or somebody that's just way, way out of shape, right? And unfortunately, I think I was falling more towards the other end of that because I don't play football, so that pretty much sums that up. But that was in 2008. So you and I have known each other now for, my goodness gracious, 16 years and then some, because that happened in 2008, and I wasn't a runner at all. And so just started running. But yes, I remember you telling me that you were going to run that with me. And wow. And we did it, right? And we did it where? Disney, right?
Disney. I still don't consider that the happiest place on earth, by the way.
Right.
And maybe we should have started with a distance smaller than marathon.
Right. Yeah. But it sums up, though, right, Christy? It sums up kind of how you run your world. And it's kind of how I run my world. I remember the doctor telling me all those other sports that you were used to doing, all that lifting weights and all that kind of stuff, it's gone. From now on, you're going to just add walking to your regimen. That was the thing that he was telling me, because they're pretty much down to that because you were just spared. And I just remember, okay, well, can I start jogging? Sure. Can I start running too? Sure. That's good for you. And so, of course, right? You would think 5Ks, 10Ks, half marathons, whatever, right? But no, you and I would have to go after a marathon.
Yeah. And that, I got to say, when you think about running a marathon, that 0.2 miles at the end is so important, because that is the longest 0.2 miles ever.
Sure. And at Disney, you got to run through Epcot Center, which is long anyway, right? When you're walking Epcot Center, but to end up just barely outside of it just to get through was almost so painful, right? But anyway. But Christy, gosh darn it, man, I'm so glad you're on the air with me. I want you to tell our audience a little bit where you currently are now. If you would just take a second and introduce yourself, and feel free to share anything as far as I want to even ask you what else in the seat that you're sitting in, how can we help you? I mean, is there say anything as far as like, hey, are you looking for anybody? Take the time to even say that, but tell me about you first and foremost.
What's interesting is I have felt like through my entire career, I have been so blessed with the people that I get to work with, the people I get to connect with and meet, and just the opportunities that have presented themselves. We think about a lot of paths, and you have this vision, or at least I did when I started my career, that, you were going to have this role and then this role and then this role. And it was going to be this progression that looked a lot like this. And nothing in my career looked like that at all. The job I thought I was going to get after college wasn't the thing that I did. And I ended up, I think many of us had this experience. We end up in the mortgage business. It wasn't like we planned that from sixth grade. I ended up in this business. And then just the path that I took was so varied and different. And to end up in a place where I am today, at University Federal Credit Union, nice. Being with the honor and privilege of being the chief lending officer, I just, what stokes me every day about coming here is the people that I work with and just the heart that they have to improve the lives, the financial lives of every member, every human that we have the opportunity to touch, and how they encourage each of our team members to bring their entire self to work. You hear a lot of aspirational goals around that. And you hear a lot about when you come to a company and you open up the hood and it's not exactly like what you thought, is being held together with chicken wire and duct tape and bubble gum. You open up the hood here and it's literally people holding hands, willing, just with the love they have for what they do and for each other and for the people whose lives we touch. They have just this heart of service. And I feel so honored to be a part of an organization that is really creating that kind of impact in people's lives. You think about mortgage and we talk about having a home and creating generational wealth, and that certainly has, an outsized impact. But I also think about the consumer loans that we get to make. And when somebody comes to us and they need $500 because their car broke down, well, that means they get to keep their job. Because here in Texas, we're not a walking community. You've got to have a vehicle to really have employment. And so that $500 loan means the difference in whether or not they get to work the hours that they need to be able to buy groceries for their family this week. And when we think about our business lending team and their ability to impact people's dreams by helping them get that business loan that they need to start their first business, or to grow and hire new people, or what they were able to do during the pandemic with the PPP loans so that businesses got to stay afloat. I mean, what an honor and a privilege to have that as the thing you get to get up and do every single day.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I mean, first of all, I got to say congratulations to you, but I am going to unfold that a little bit, because as our audience is listening, they're listening to somebody that just kind of made it, right? And you actually, I think you and I had a conversation at one point that the C-suite would fit you well. It's just the way that you were always, 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 always. And I can say that. You don't have to say it, but I will say it. And I know that you and I had a conversation about that someday, looking at each other and saying, Christy, you're going to run your own show someday, right? That type of a thing. And so you just belonged in that leadership. And if you look at the title of our show, it's called A Gift with a Bow, because there's an awful lot of people that believe that it's that the people that are sitting in your seat are people who just kind of made it there. It's just kind of the journey. They were almost like the paving was set for them to get to that spot. And I will tell you right now that that's just not the case with you, especially in today's market, which I'm going to ask you a little bit about the market, but I want to kind of just put a story behind a so-called A Gift with a Bow. And I think a lot of our listeners will learn from this. I remember, Christy, at one point, I think you were a branch manager. I was about to make the mistake of saying just a branch manager, like that's something. So, God, I'm glad I kind of re-swallowed that, but now I said it again, so I'm kind of in trouble. But but with that said, I believe you were a branch manager at that time, and there was just something that was going on in your life, and then there was another step that you could be taking, and you decided to do something so out of the ordinary. It was so extraordinary that I want you to share what that meant. What is this gift with a bow? You don't need to mention companies or anything else, but what was this gift in a bow? Do you remember that story at all?
I do, and I think we should kind of start from the beginning of that story, which is really Absolutely. How you and I met. I had taken over as the branch manager of a company. I'd actually just recently switched companies, and one of the LOs that I ended up recruiting, who came and joined me, said, "Hey, I really want to join your team, but there's this thing that my existing company was working on, and I really would like to have it. Would you agree just to take a look at it?" And so I did, and I was like, "Well, who was your sales rep, and who can I talk to?" And I ended up reaching out to you, and I remember this, and it probably didn't happen exactly this way, but this is definitely my recollection of it. That I picked up the phone and called you, and I said, "Hey, I'm interested in this product that you're selling, and I think it would change my team's life. I have this one LO," and you were like, "What's your title?" And I said, "Branch manager." And you're like, "Yeah, I can't talk to you." And in my mind, you hung up on me. I'm sure that wasn't really true, because that is just not who you are as a person. Yeah. It was like kind of a dead end. And in the course of conversation that we had, you were like, "Hey, you know what? I'd love to do this, but you really aren't the decision maker. And the good news is your company is doing a pilot, so maybe you can get in that pilot." And so we proceeded to figure out who the right decision makers were. I picked up the phone and called like random people to find out that the pilot was closed and I couldn't be in it, and my team couldn't have it. But if it worked out, they'd let us know. I proceeded to sit on my boss's desk, literally just sit across from him until he would agree to call and get me into that pilot. And I think as a punishment, they sent me to Minneapolis in February.
Yeah.
That was quite an experience. And we were just kind of unofficially in the pilot. They're like, "Well, we'll let you go to training. We'll see how you do." And our team proceeded to really
succeed,
find our spot here. It was an amazing adventure with how we served our customers and our referral partners. And we did a really good job, to the point where they said, "Okay, we think you should officially be in the pilot, because if we put you in the pilot, you guys would be number one." And which is a good way to get into a pilot after you right. No risk at doing it. And the guy who was running the pilot called me up one day and he said, "I would love for you to kind of like this. It's definitely going to work. We're going to roll this out, nationally. I'd love for you to come do it." And I thought, well, this sounds like a terrible job. It sounds absolutely awful. This opportunity that presented itself seemed like it was going to be sitting behind a desk looking at spreadsheets. And I love a good spreadsheet, but that's not, I'm relational. I want to be with people.
Yeah.
So I told him I just wasn't interested. And he said, "Well, tell me what it would take to get you interested." And I can remember calling you and several of the folks that we were working with and just talking about, what does it look like to create success at a larger scale, where you don't get to choose your teammates like I was able to do, right? I had a team that I had built, which is very different than a team that of people nationally that you really don't have that same kind of trust and relations with. And you and I talked through it. I got so much immense advice from you and a couple of others on your team that really helped me solidify kind of what this needed to look like. Spent some time with my husband, spent time in prayer, talking about, well, what does this mean for my family? What does this mean for the team that I would have to be leaving? And I decided that this was something I should go for, but only if it looked a certain way. And so I ended up creating a 40-page proposal for not only what the job should look like, but what implementation and rollout and change management should look like and what our goals should be. And I didn't want to present this in a way that was just, let me send you a PowerPoint and something that's cool. And it got me thinking about how special this gift was, that the gift of being able to provide this value to our referral partners and to our borrowers was so immense that it was something super special, like a Tiffany box. I don't know if you've ever seen somebody get a gift from Tiffany with that fancy blue box with
a white bow, right?
Right, like everybody knows that it's something special and they get excited when they see it. Somebody hands you that box, you're not throwing it in the trash. You are going to open it and see what's inside. So I decided to take this proposal, have it professionally bound. I had somebody come in, an artist come in and paint a bright red box with a blue bow and use that as kind of the logo. And then I had a bright red box made with a blue bow that tied onto it, put the proposal in, and then shipped it to the 3 executives that were kind of making the decision on this, and had it made sure I coordinated with their assistants to make sure that it was delivered at the same time, right ahead of a meeting they were going to have to discuss the future of this program. So I also remember being petrified that this was not going to go well. 1, that the logistics were not going to work out. 2, it was not going to be well received. They're going to be like, this crazy person, what is she doing? And that they weren't going to like the content, like the proposal, which was my heart and soul,
right,
for impacting people's lives. Now, you get to fast forward and it worked out pretty well, but those were challenging days and moments.
Yeah. That's crazy, because I just was writing some things down, right? Because vocationally, the market is kind of in a weird place. But when I listen to your story, why it relates so much, and I talk about your story so much, there's only a couple of stories throughout my whole lifetime, being 20 plus years in the coaching industry, that sticks out, and yours is one of those. Because if you think about it, there are certain things that still apply today that you just said a mouthful without even really trying. And that is the research that you had to do. You had to research it out. You were researching out everything. Even someone told you, here's an opportunity. You researched it out. The next thing you did was you prayed about it, right? You talked about it with your family and everything else. How critical is that? And then you went on to talk to other people. You talked to myself, other teammates of mine, as well as other people in the industry that I'm sure you admired. And then you thought outside the box, but you still continued to research it out. You actually put a document together of 40 pages. This is not just something that somebody just by a whim saying, hey, give me the job. I want to prove to you what I can do. You actually wrote it out. And like you said, right, it could have been a Jerry Maguire moment at that point. It's either make or break, because you unfolded the whole thing, right? Without the emotion side of that sitting in front of those people. But it was a gift with a bow around it. And I remember you telling me about it. I remember the angst. I remember all that. But then I also remember the fact that you became that person to those guys. And you made such an impact that way. But all the points that you were just saying still applies today. And anybody that really is in a C-suite level. But here's the beautiful part about it. Most of our audience is not a C-suite person. But here's the thing. Everyone is a CEO of their company within a company. And so everything that you just talked about is really what most people still need to be applying into their jobs. Research, pray about it, talk to people about it, think outside the box, and honestly create the proposals, right, that you need to do by doing your own research. Don't count on someone else to tell you exactly how to get it done. You can learn from people, but eventually it has to come down to who you are. And that's one of the things that's genuine about you, Christy, that I've always known since day one. Because, You absolutely were one of those people that was just willing to give. I mean, I was your consultant, but you were giving me a lot to think about and to grow on. And so, which leads us really, when it comes to vocational well-being, Christy, we like to balance it off. And one of the things that I think is missed a lot is the relational side of vocational success. Okay. In other words, we've had people talk about their families, which I know that means an awful lot to you. Congratulations, by the way. Your son and daughter are just, I love the journey those guys have taken. But when I'm talking about the relational side, and a lot of people have not talked about, is their peers, their network of people. Christy, do you mind sharing a little bit of how much your network, you already gave some people credit here, but how important was your network and your group, your relational side of you in the growth of your business? And you?
I think you can't underestimate how important it is, and how important in a technologically driven world, which I feel like my entire career has really been in. I know that, starting out in when I did in the late 80s, early 90s, that we weren't as technologically driven as we are today, but we've always had that base of technology and the opportunity to not be face to face. And I remember a leader in my past, talking about being belly to belly. And I love that as not literally touching bellies, that's probably a little too close, but literally just being in the same room as people. And today we have so many opportunities to not be in the same room. It's worth the effort. And one of the things that taking the role that we talked about did was it let me build a network of people all across the US. And it meant a lot of time on planes and a lot of time away from my family. But the ability to just sit down and break bread with folks and to build those relationships was immensely important in creating insights. Because we think about role models, and for young kids, what do they always want to be? They want to be firefighters and teachers and police officers. Well, why is that? Because those are the people that they see and they interact with. And if we don't have mentors and role models and people that we can see achieving things, it's hard to see those things for ourselves or to even know that they exist, right? A lot of little kids don't know that you can be a hedge fund manager, or that, 10,000 other jobs that are out there. They just don't know what those are because they don't see them. And so when you create relationships, you learn about people's interesting and unique pasts and the things that maybe their parents did or that their friends did. And so it expands your whole world. When we stay in a small box, it limits our thinking, it limits our ability to problem solve, and it limits that ability to get perspective. I do a regular video, and one of my videos also came from, and like I said, I'm so lucky to learn from so many great people. Yeah. But a coach that I used at one point in my career, who still to this day is a friend, said you can't read the label from inside the pickle jar. Meaning that you need that outside look at what you're doing. And so I have an internal board of directors, if you will, that are people that I can reach out to and say, hey, this is what I'm thinking. What do you see that I don't see? And they're going to be honest enough with me to tell me. They are going to give that very valued feedback, because feedback is hard to give. We think that it's easy to tell people what they're not doing wrong. And maybe it's easy in your head. Maybe it's easy if you're mean about it. But if you really care about somebody and you want them to improve, and you're a good person, giving hard feedback can be challenging. Yes. Because you don't want to hurt somebody's feelings. You only want them to improve. But as humans, we need that perspective of what we're not doing well, not just the pat on the back of what we are doing well. And so having those folks in my life, like you, I could probably name 50 people that have contributed to my success because they were kind enough to take a phone call, to sit with me at a conference over a beverage, to just passing in the hallway, have a hug and a conversation. And just knowing too that you have people in your life that have expertise and skills that you don't, For me, that gives me wings. Like if I know that I walk into a room where I may not know as much as everybody else in the room, that can be
Right.
daunting. But if I know that I've got the phone a friend of 100 people behind me,
Right.
it's huge.
Yeah.
It creates confidence and it gives you the ability to take on challenging things. And so to me, that's what relation means.
I love what you just said, by the way, creating confidence, right? Because one of the things that I truly admire from just watching from behind is because whenever I've watched you in the different roles that you've been in, all the way from your being a branch manager, all the way as you're climbing certain ladders, and then to where you sit today, the one thing I'm convinced of, Christy, is that I don't think you're the type that is too concerned that somebody is better than you in certain things in life, right? There's way too many people that worry about putting somebody in place. In fact, one of the when I was looking for a job, Christy, and you came to assist me. You were kind of that hug that I needed, right? But I remember someone that you and I know very well returning a phone call to me because I thought we had a great connection, and I thought, oh man, this is an opportunity. I've never heard it bluntly stated this way, but he goes, Jay, the only reason I honestly don't and probably will not have an opportunity for you is because I have a feeling you'll take my job.
I hope I hire somebody that takes my job.
Right. That's the point, right? And so let's not go any further on that part of the story, but this is the part of the story that makes a difference, right? Because you're not intimidated by the fact that somebody is going to help you, elevate you, and it's using the gifts that are in a bow to be able to help everybody around you, right? And so, and that's one of the things that I've always noticed about you, Christy. So how important is that to be able to look at the different qualities of the people that you're in relationships with? How important has that played into your role, in your current role even?
It's really huge because here's the thing I would say. One, when people feel like they have a connection, that creates a lot of value on both sides of the fence.
Yes.
But there are so many things that we can do to learn from those around us. It doesn't matter if they have one day in the business or they've been in the business 10 years longer than you. People bring unique things to the table. And when you take the time to be able to uncover some of those things, you're going to learn something. There's not a person in my life that I haven't learned something from if I've taken the time to slow down. And I know that one of my faults is that sometimes I move a little too fast. I overschedule my calendar sometimes because I want to be able to give so much back to those that are around me. I have been blessed with people who have poured into my life, and I want to be able to do that for others.
Right. By the way, that pickle jar thing, it just came up very recently. You posted it on social media, and it's amazing who ends up reading your posts but never comment on it, and all of a sudden later down the line you hear that it affected you, right? So I'll just be the first one to tell you that post affected me. I don't know if I commented on that exact post. I think I might have sent you a private message, but but sometimes you never know who you're touching when you do posts, right? Because people read it and they don't comment on it, but it affects them. It affected me because it's so true, and I recently just asked you, this is probably one of the key steps for anyone that's listening out there when you're starting to put something like that together. And you were basically talking about mentorship and all of those kind of things. And one of the things that I asked you is to be the Paul in my life, right? And so to quickly state what that is, the Paul, Timothy, and Barnabas's. Paul being your mentors, the people that can actually, they have the license. You've given them the license to tell you, hey, you're heading in the wrong direction. Go this way. Given them the right to do that. And I asked you that very recently. You were gracious enough to be able to say yes to that. That's already the beginning of total accountability and making sure that I'm being led by people that are better than I, and so that's a great example of that. Where the Barnabases, right, are the people that are your peers, your friends. And I know you have a whole bunch of those because I meet them every day, by the way. And then there's the Timothys, the people that you're actually imparting your wisdom on, and they're learning and growing. And I know that there's a tremendous amount of that even in your life. But the Pauls are what's hard, right? The Pauls are the ones that, number one, it takes effort to do that. You got to ask them to become your Paul, because they've got to know that this is not just, I'm going to call you when I need to be hugged, but I want you to hug me when I'm needing it the most and I'm not willing to go get it, right? Huge difference. And so you were gracious enough to do that. And that's where that internal board of directors are that you talked about just now. And I really want to just jump on that a little bit, because I think from a vocational sense, including the relational well-being, those two go hand in hand together. Christy, if I'm a loan officer sitting here right now and I'm listening to this, and or just a salesperson, doesn't have to be in the mortgage business, but as a salesperson, what does that mean to have an internal board of directors? I mean, is that a fictitious mind? I mean, is that just a conceptual thing in my own mind and keep in check, or what does that mean? How would you coach me to have an internal board of directors? What's the makeup of that?
Yeah, so this is not the itty bitty meanie committee that is the, if you think about, your head pops off a hinge and there's your internal dialogue, right? That's not what this is. Right. This is the people that you do let speak into your life, that you pick up the phone and call, and very intentionally. For me, there's a group that is work related that I would pick up the phone and call and say, you guys are the people that I would trust if I'm going to think about a new job, if I am going to think about a new business opportunity, to help me understand the pitfalls and the things. For a loan officer, that could be the group of people, that could be your referral partners, that could be your top customers, to where when you're thinking about, hey, this has been a pretty challenging market and I've got to up my game. I want to really work on my elevator pitch. That 30 seconds of how do I stick with somebody and how do they remember me, as opposed to the other people that are calling on them today, right? Our business has never been under more attack as salespeople.
For sure. Because
the market, we're in a down cycle. And for many of the folks in particularly the mortgage industry, but even in sales, we've really only been in declining interest rate economies or low interest rate. We've also only been in fairly good economies. For many folks that are in sales, they've never been in an economy where we've got a rough patch going. It's like it is today. And so it's easy to get a little down there. And it's also easy to really feel all that level of competition. And so as you want to increase your skills, sharpen the axe, if you will, having a group of people that you can call and say, hey, what do you see as the number one reason that you do business with me? What do you see as the number one reason that you refer somebody to me? Or, hey, this is how I'm thinking that I see myself. Is this how you see me? I think those are huge questions to ask, and people that will give you that valuable feedback, right? That's part of your internal board of directors. Yeah. I also think there has to be a group that crosses over, that knows you both personally and professionally, that can speak into your life, that can tell you, one of the things I constantly need is for people to tell me when I'm taking on too much, and I'm not, hold me accountable to making sure I'm taking the time to stop and call my kids. None of them live with me anymore. They're all grown. I have, as you mentioned, my son and my two beautiful daughters, but with the exception of my college-age daughter who lives with me over the summer, none of them live in the house. And so I have to make time for them. I have to make time for my husband. And, this year we'll have been married for 30 years, which I think is a true accomplishment, right?
Yes, it is. Us too, by the way. It's September. So.
Right. You and I we're kind of on that same path.
Right.
But that's it's not, and I'm not to say that our marriage is perfect. We've certainly had our ups and downs like any other couple, but the two of us are committed. And so having that group of people that can just remind me when I'm charging hard in business to be like, hey, I've seen your calendar. You haven't done this. Or even I'll give you an example of one of my current coworkers who noticed at a conference that I hadn't eaten all day, and then went out and brought me a piece of pizza and just said, hey, this was like the only thing that was open. But it's 11 o'clock at night and I noticed you literally have not eaten all day today. what a hugely impactful thing to do for somebody to care about you so deeply that they bring you a slice of pizza.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's necessary. And then you need that other group of folks that is part of your internal board of directors that are the people that know you personally, that you can share some of your fears with. And that's so important because we all have fears. We all have that place where we feel our shortcomings. I can remember being part of a women's mentorship group. And it's the lady who put it together is just a force of nature. And she has the mentors go first and they tell their story. This is not the story that you hear on, Instagram and social media. This is what it took to get there. Kind of the conversation that we're having today. This isn't the highlight reel. These are the ups and downs. And they share that. And I can remember being the second to last person to go. And I was like, I don't belong in this room. These women have accomplished the most amazing things. They've been through the struggles. And I said something about that later in the day. And what I learned that was literally every person in the room felt the same way.
Yeah.
And that was so eye-opening for me because that's a fear that I don't know that I would have been comfortable sharing had this lady not created this safe space. So we need to have that safe space in our life where we can share those fears and really start to understand like what fears are rational and what fears are we creating for ourselves by the stories that we tell ourselves. And those are the things that are holding us back.
Yeah. Christy, those are such loaded words. And did that just happen out of just because of who you are? Did that just happen? Or how would, let's say I am just one person that, man, I just don't know if I have those kind of relationships. How do I even begin to develop those kind of relationships? I mean, what do you think you've done correctly? Or maybe even incorrectly. I kind of taught you a thing or two about how to be able to develop that.
I don't know that I've done anything correctly. I think I would like to say, because one of the things I try to do with my time is be very intentional about it.
Yeah.
And I'd like to say that this was all very intentional and well thought out. But there is that common phrase that says sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. And God puts things in our people and opportunities in our path. And if we just slow down and listen, we can take advantage of them. And I think that's a big place. But one of the things, and this, I had this conversation I've had this conversation with several folks, is about creating that time.
Yeah, I've had in that time. Yeah.
Right. I've had two bosses that have shared with me around you think about everywhere you go, there you are. And one of the things I do constantly is really, I fill my calendar. And because I want to be productive. I don't want anybody to ever assume that I'm not pulling my weight or doing a good job or giving it my all. And I think if you know me, you probably know that there's not a chance in Hades that's going to happen. But it's one of those things that shows up for me in my life over and over. But what that means is I have to really learn about saying no to the good so that I can say yes to the best, because there's so many good things I can do. I need to create that space in my calendar and in my life to be intentionally relational. And it's something that I'm, constantly working on to improve and to really have time instead of just running from meeting to meeting, have 5 minutes in the hallway to hug folks and say hi and slow down and make time for them. And the same thing is true. And this is one of the things I learned from you when I was traveling all over the US, was to make sure that when I was in a town that I reached out to somebody and just had coffee or had a meal with them, because you're going to have to eat. In theory, you do have to eat. So plan that time to spend it with somebody and make sure you're talking about things that are other than work. My default tends to be that I get to the business stuff first, that I go through and I make sure that I'm doing everything that you need to help you achieve your journey. It's one of the bars that I have for being in other people's lives is, am I helping you create more opportunity and achieve more success than you thought possible, right? Am I the wind beneath your wings? Yeah. And sometimes what that leads to is me not being as connected to people personally. And so it's something I really work on, that I would say if you are somebody who's wanting to build these types of relationships, that making sure you've built time into your calendar, into your day, to connect with people and get to know them personally. One of the things we did in the Bible study with a group of young ladies, high school ladies, was we created a list of 50 get to know you questions that we were trying to help them understand how to build new relationships as they went off to college. And so we just spent some time brainstorming 50 questions they could kind of have in their back pocket for when they went off to orientation, or, you know, when they had an opportunity to engage with folks on their new college campus. And the list really, when I looked at it, were things that I could use in business as well. They were things, I go to a networking event, you know, asking somebody, hey, what do you do? That only gets you so far. How can you ask a more open-ended question about what's bringing you passion today? What sparks joy in your life? Like, what an amazing opportunity to really get to know somebody, and watch when you ask questions like that, how their face lights up. Yeah. And how do you remember things about them? How do you get to know them as a human and what drives and motivates them? So important from creating any kind of lasting relationship. And again, I'm not saying that I'm great at it, because I think a lot of times this is really my struggle and the place in life that I need to work on. I just hope that some days I show up and do a decent enough job that I get to still have friends in my life. Yeah,
that's so true. So important with what you're talking about. And one of the things this is so unrehearsed. This is what I love about these kind of conversations, is because it's from the heart. It's from the two furthest points is usually the intellect and the emotional, right? And it's such a long point. And I love having these kind of conversations because it's so true. It's an investment of time. And you've got to make it. Yeah, you've got to make it. And it's not just on the professional side either. It's on the personal side. It's on the spiritual side. It's all of those things. And my goodness, the nuggets that have just already come out, right? Just our short conversation, and time's up. I mean, you're literally off the hot seat at this point, Christy. And I mean, not that it was too hot. I hope not anyway. But Christy, I know this won't be the first time I will interview you on this show, because on this show, there's more. There's so much more that you and I, you've already started to go down all the different well-being. So I was really struggling. Where do I put Christy's well-being, the focus of vocational, and which well-being am I going to pull in? But I will tell you right now, you just shared your heart, and you shared with us pretty much just about all of them, spiritual, physical. And we haven't really touched the whole physical side of that, but the spiritual side, you brought up Bible studies, and you brought up, spirituality can mean just a hug from somebody, just a quiet time that's necessary. And then the relational side of it, absolutely 100% critical. And it's making the time to do that. So Christy, would you come on my show again? Would you do that for me?
Like anytime. It's such an honor to be able to spend time with you, and
awesome
to be able to cheer on you and your success, your family. Yes, of course.
And by the way, Christy's one of those people that I called when I started my own business. And the one thing for sure is that you did not say to me, which a lot of people did, Jay, it's 2023. Really? That's not what you did. I don't even remember if you remember talking to me about that. And you said, really, it's about time. It's one of the things that you said. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, I'm good with that. That's the best tip that we can have. But that's your heart. That's who you are in my life. Definitely, I consider you not only a Barnabas in my life, but definitely a Paul in my life as well. So Christy, only because I got to say goodbye at this point, I just so want to thank you. First of all, congratulate you for where you are. I know you're an incredible blessing to UFCU. And I can't wait to see your movement inside of that and what kind of change you're really going to make. But Christy, I will ask you again, but do you have any parting words to the people that have been listening? I'll give you the final word on that.
Take the time to smile at somebody today, to give them a hug, because just that little thing, you don't know what kind of amazing impact you can have. So it really is the little things in life that make all the difference.
I love that too. So Christy, thanks again. I'm going to go ahead and send you back to the green room. Enjoy the refreshments there, right? The virtual refreshments. And again, grateful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Absolutely. All right, guys, man, I'm telling you what, right? Sometimes every single episode gets better and better and better. And I hope that today you learned an awful lot. And the key takeaway that I want you to be able to walk away with today is something that was just said because it's a natural flow for Christy, but it's something that you should take on very, very seriously. And that is investing your time into relationships that not only will help you professionally, but personally speaking as well. Guys, I can't say enough about that. Every single bit of your success, listen, you are the CEO of your own company. If you already are the CEO of your company, that's even better. But you are, every single one of you listening to me, you're the CEO of a company within a company. In other words, you got to run yourself. Part of running yourself is that you absolutely are not going to do it alone. There's other people that you got to bring to the table. I am grateful for my relationship with someone like Christy Soukhamneut, and I hope that you are as well, proud of who is around you. And if you're struggling with that,
and that wraps another episode of Challenging Your Status Quo.
As Christy
We hope you
said,
found inspiration and practical wisdom to carry
that
into
might
your
be the
daily
beginning
lives.
for some of you.
If JA has inspired you, join our
I hope this
community
made a
by
difference
subscribing
for
to the
you guys
podcast. Stay connected with
grateful,
us at
thankful, and as always,
latreacoaching.com and through our social media channels where the conversation and growth
Take care,
continue.
everyone. See you on the
On
next
behalf of
episode.
JA and his whole team, we thank you for listening and invite you to keep challenging the status quo in your own life. Until next time, remember, pursue excellence, live purposefully, and embrace holistic success. We'll catch you next episode.